Good evening and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bluddworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today I'm going to, do a video that I know is going to raise some eyebrows. I know it's going to come off as being controversial, and it's designed that way. It's designed to spark a debate and and possibly even get under some people's skin, which I think is a healthy thing sometimes when we're looking at our hobby and thinking about what it is to be a good ambassador. All right, so be a good ambassador, but not a gatekeeper. But shouldn't you do both? All right, and so that's my premise here is that I think that ultimately, um, on those rare occasions, you should be a gatekeeper, and that's for the purpose of protecting the hobby. It's also for the purpose of being a good ambassador of the hobby as well. And I will flesh out that idea as I go along. So this, of course, has been prompted by a video I saw about a week and a half ago or so, and I was going to kind of leave it there, and not really touch upon it. And then I went back and I read the original article that it was based on, and I was still going to leave it there, but it's come up a few times in the last couple of days as well, and I've seen kind of strands of it in other places, other articles, other comments here and there that ran along the same lines. So, I decided, I am going to do this video. I'm going to, touch on this topic, and I'm going to make my point about it. So, without further ado, there was an article written, had about 5 points of how to be a good ambassador for the RPG hobby. And so I read them, and there were portions of it that I agreed with. There were portions of it I completely disagreed with, and there was, a couple of points that I felt were missed opportunities that should have been said. So I'm going to start off with, just the idea of what is an ambassador. So an ambassador, and for the purpose of this article, it was meant to be the same thing. For an ambassador, you're basically trying to bring more people into the RPG hobby. And if we use a specific game, I will use Dungeons and Dragons as a specific game. I know that's very cliche to use the one, but it's the one that I'm most familiar with. And so as far as being a guide, which this also talked about, be a guide, not a gatekeeper. If I put my guide hat on, then it requires this step that was a missed opportunity in the original article. If I'm going to be a guide and not a gatekeeper, the first thing about being a guide is that you have to be very, very familiar with what you're going to be introducing the prospective players to, the hobby. So I'm going to bring them to the game that I know best. All right, and that's an absolute contradiction to what was said in the article, that you should ask the players what their interests are in, what games they might be interested in. But if it's not a game that I am either interested in or I'm even aware of, then I really can't be a guide for it. All right, and so that was the first problem that I had with it. Also, to be an ambassador and a guide, you need to have a certain level of respect for where the game or just the genre of games had come from, what their intent was, and you should, as an ambassador, play up its positives and downplay its negatives, at least as you're introducing new people into it. Now, I'm not saying you're going to outright lie. All right. You don't have to point to first edition Dungeons and Dragons and say this game is the perfect version of Dungeons and Dragons. All right, because it's not. It's a very good version. Its intent was to be, a very good version of it. There was no intent for this to have any of the flaws that it has. But all of its flaws are game mechanics wise. All right. And there's still not that very many of them. Some of its flaws are just the formatting of the book as well. So I don't have to say Advanced Dungeons and Dragons is the best game ever or that it's perfect. But the intent was that it was going to be, the best at the time for what it was looking to do. The intent of the writers was to create a game system where the players at the table can, including the DM, can make this game work for their table. So it had flexibility built in. It had bring your own interests into it, built into it. It had very much delineated, written line by line, that not all of these rules have to be used. That the primary purpose is to have fun. And that it is meant to bring in as many people as possible. Inclusion has been in Dungeons and Dragons and all of the other role-playing games that I have ever read over the last 45 years. All right, in every single one of them. Not one of them says that you should exclude anyone based on any particular quality or whatever. All right, so they've always been inclusive. They've always been welcoming. They've always been flexible. And as an ambassador to the hobby, you should make that clear. Hey, you know what? If you're a little bit unsure, I'm going to make you comfortable with this game system, and I'm sure that you're going to like it. All right, and bring them in. So that's the first thing. A missed opportunity was to speak up for the the game and for the hobby itself. On the issue of gatekeeping, I know this is a very hot button topic. Gatekeeping is a horrible thing. It's the worst thing that you can possibly be. There are certain instances of gatekeeping that are actually healthy for not just your table, but for the hobby in general. Not everyone is ready to play this hobby. All right, not everyone is ready for the way that you're running your game table. All right, and I'm going to use an analogy here. All right, I'm going to use you have a dining table set up in your home and you're inviting somebody in and they enter into your home and they walk up to your table for dinner and they hand you a list of do's and don'ts at your dinner table. But they're not just saying, well, these are the things that I'm not going to eat. They're saying, these are the things I don't want to see at your table. These are the things that if you bring them to the table, you're a terrible host because I've already presented you with this. These are the things that no one else can have fun with. All right, and I shouldn't have to be asked to step away or expected to step away and you still serve that food item that I disagree with. All right, so when someone comes to your table with something like this, my response to that would be to hand it right back to the person and say, you are not ready for this table. You're not prepared to play this hobby or this particular game, all right, with your issues. All right, so let me put this into a gaming context. I think it's a responsibility, a good ambassador, for you to be upfront with your prospective players. So when they come up to your table, you should tell them, this is the game system we are going to be playing. We're going to be playing first edition Dungeons and Dragons. The theme of my game is going to be high fantasy dungeon crawl. All right, so they start to get a sense, and you explain what that means if they're completely brand new to both the genre or role-playing games in general. Then you state the rating for my table and everything that you will experience on my table is nothing more than PG-13. All right, now, nothing in this rule book are you going to experience that is beyond PG-13. Nothing in the player's handbook is going to expect you to do anything or allow you to do anything that is beyond PG-13. Nothing in the monster manual will you face that is beyond PG-13. I would then provide the player with a PDF copy of each of these, and I would ask the player to go back, take a skim through it. If there's anything in here, you as most likely an adult, that you cannot handle at the PG-13 level, then you are not ready to play this game. All right, you are not ready possibly for this hobby. When you're able to handle it, then you are welcome to come back. Now, I very specifically say that the prospective player is not ready for this. Not that my table is not ready to respond and react to them. And the reason why I do that is because this is the preset. This is what we're going to experience. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to face. This doesn't have to change to meet what the player is prepared for. The player needs to be prepared for this. All right, so yes, as a DM, you should be outright open to that prospective player. This is what the expectations are that you have for what you will experience at this table, and this is our expectations for what you're going to, or how you're going to behave at this table. Puts the onus on them. They need to move to where the hobby is at. They need to move where the rule sets are at, or what the table is at, not the other way around. So, coming to the table with a consent form is a quick automatic for me. Shoo, go someplace else with that. All right, when you feel that you're ready for what I'm running, then you're welcome to come back. But otherwise, we're not going to change what we're doing to cater to you. All right, and so I disagree with him when he speaks about, the author of the article speaks about Make it about your audience. That's not initially done. That should be done later on as you get to know the players and the players start to become more familiar with the world setting that they're playing in. Then they might start saying, you know what, my character would like to be able to do this. That's perfectly fine. All right, they should have fun with it. But initially speaking, you know, that session zero is the DM show. All right, and you ultimately say to them, if you sit down at this table after I have already explained the expectations. See, that's the thing that a guide does. A guide, or a teacher, if you will, sets out the expectations, what you can expect as a player and what I expect as a teacher for your behavior in this classroom or at this table. So that was the next thing. His third point was to facilitate positive experiences like movie nights and gatherings. I mean, that's nice to have if you're going to develop a very close personal relationship with all of these people and you're going to see them in your home or in a space where you're physically there, or physically meeting in like a games shop, or more particularly in the home, and you're close friends. That's one thing. But to be welcoming, I think can be facilitated without all of that. The best way to be welcoming and the best way to facilitate a positive experience is to be reliable. Be on time with your games. And I know it's very, very difficult sometimes. And you're not always going to be perfect with it. But respect their time. They need to respect your time. And that's the biggest thing that you can do, in my opinion, is to make sure that you're keeping to schedules, or you're even creating schedules so they can know, but you still have some flexibility in there in case something happens. You never put the game above real life, all right? And you're always understanding, or always should be understanding of that kind of thing. So, in there, you don't need to throw a party. You don't need to have movie nights. You don't need to, do all of these side things just to keep them invested in playing the game. Just run the game for the purpose of fun, and run it consistently, and be on time and respect everybody's time, and that will come naturally. Don't tolerate bad behaviors at your table. Well, clearly, if someone is doing some of the examples that they use, like if they are harassing somebody at your table, or just, bottom line, just being a dick, of course you're not going to tolerate that. But if a group of longtime friends are telling off-color jokes, and a new person, all right, is coming into that, and the new person says, you know what, I that really bothers me, please don't do that, then everybody should respect that and not do that. If they continue, then yes, the DM should be, listen, guys, gals, whoever's sitting at the table, listen, you need to stop that. All right, it's not right. It's not the tone of the table that we're looking to have, and leave it at that. I mean, no one is, anything much more severe than that, you're crossing away from that PG-13 level that I'm talking about, like how I run my table. So it's almost a no-brainer. Yes, if somebody is being really abusive, then you should be ready, willing, and able to say, listen, this is not acceptable, and if you continue, I'm going to ask you to take a time out from this group for a while, maybe even permanently, depending on what they actually do. And that includes bringing to the table any kind of toxic behavior, i.e. coming to the table with something like this and making demands on a group well, this is how everybody else needs to play the way that I want to play. That's not acceptable either. Um, the last one was to mention your own likes and not your hates. Again, it goes back to um, boasting for the game system that you're looking to play. I'm not going to say that Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition was perfect, or Second Edition, or any of the D&D editions, whether it be 3, 4, 5, the old editions, whether it be, the original, or Holmes, or Mulvey, or Menser. They all have their positives and negatives as far as game mechanics are concerned. But I'm not going to focus on what I don't like about the game when we're running it. I'm not going to point it out and say, well, I really don't like psionics, and mention it every time that we're playing. I'm just not going to have psionics in the game. And I'm just going to ignore it and move on from there. Now, if a player keeps on pushing for psionics, I just tell them, listen, I'm not a big fan of the game and of psionics, and so I don't put it in my game. All right, I really don't want to. Now, if you can convince me that you can make it work, I'll be willing to give it a try. But for the most part, I really don't, want to play with that. I've tried it, don't like it. Let's just move on, and hopefully that's enough. So you're not going to focus on the negatives, other than just mentioning, I don't want to include that in my game, but you're going to highlight the positives. I really like this part of the game, and so on. So, I mean, there were a few things in this that I can agree with, but bottom line is that if you're not gatekeeping the bad players that are going to come into your space and look to leverage it because you want to be, oh well, I want to be considered welcoming. I want to be considered, like, I don't want to be called a gatekeeper, and so I'm just going to allow everybody to my table. No, that doesn't make any sense. That's not being a good ambassador of the game. All right, because you're not developing the best qualities of the game. You're not guiding anyone. All right, if you're allowing that kind of a thing to come into your game and cause all kinds of drama and turmoil. So so you can do both. All right, you should do both. You should be a good ambassador of the game and still be protective of it. Be protective of the game, be protective of the legacy of the game, and be protective of the dynamics at your table. All right, so I'm sure that I'll get some people that liked what I said and they'll give me thumbs up. I am positive that I will get some people that didn't like what I said and give me thumbs down. I welcome your comments. I welcome your agreement. I welcome your disagreement. If you are going to disagree, if you are going to give me a thumbs down, please point out, have some courage, and point out and say, this is why I didn't agree with you. You should look at it this way, or whatever, and then I will gladly respond to that. But I mean, if you're going to put a thumbs down and not leave a comment, that's really weak. All right, and so if you want to be weak, fine. That's probably the kind of player that would come to the table with one of these anyway. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down and add your comment why you didn't like it. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. And be on the lookout for another video fairly soon. I'm going to probably do a walkthrough of Alpha Blue. because I just recently picked that up. And I'm also having in the rotation a visit to Conan Conan 2D20. So I'll go over the Game Master Shield and the other 2 card decks that I finally picked up. So once again, you'll have a I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen sometime soon. And you'll be safe out there and enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.